The tower screamed, metal folding in on itself, concrete dust choking the air thick enough to taste blood and ash. Elijah Ashford stood in the wreckage of Pinnacle Tower's lobby, boots crunching over shattered glass lungs, burning with every breath he dragged through his sleeve. Victoria Sterling lay pinned beneath a steel beam, her cream blouse torn and darkened with blood that spread across her collarbone like spilled ink. 3 months ago, she'd stood in this same lobby and destroyed him with words sharper than the debris now raining from the ceiling. Now she looked up at him with eyes that couldn't reconcile the man in front of her with the janitor she'd thrown away. Her voice came out, fractured disbelief cutting through the pain. "You came back after what I did to you." Elijah wedged a crowbar under the beam, testing the weight, calculating angles. Sweat carved lines through the dust on his face. His watch, the one she'd called pathetic, ticked against his wrist, the crystal cracked, but the second hand still sweeping forward with Naomi's stubborn refusal to quit. "I didn't come back for you, Ms. Sterling. I came back because my daughter needs to believe good people still exist." The watch face caught emergency light filtering through the smoke. A hairline fracture ran across the glass like a scar, but the mechanism underneath refused to acknowledge damage. Tick, tick, tick. Victoria's eyes tracked to his wrist recognition flashing across her face. "Your watch. It's broken." "My wife gave me this. It stops when it needs to tell me something. Right now it's telling me we need to move." The screen went black. White letters emerged 3 months earlier. The apartment smelled like burnt pancakes and hope. Elijah stood at the stove in the pre-dawn darkness, spatula in hand, watching batter bubble and brown while his daughter's soft breathing filtered through the crack in her bedroom door. 5:45 in the morning. The city outside still held its breath, the world suspended in that moment before it remembered to be cruel. He'd set his alarm for 5:30, same as every weekday for the past 3 years. The routine held him together when grief tried to pull him apart. Wake, shower, coffee, make breakfast for Zara. The structure was a life raft. The pancake burned. Elijah flipped it anyway, scraping the black parts into the sink. Zara wouldn't notice. She never did. Her door creaked open. Small feet patted across the linoleum. Elijah turned to find her standing in the doorway, hair wild from sleep, clutching the stuffed elephant she'd named Bigger, because her mother had called her my little girl with dreams bigger than the sky. "Morning, baby girl." She rubbed her eyes with the heel of one hand. "Morning, Daddy." Zara climbed into her chair, watching him plate the pancakes. "Daddy, when's Mommy coming home from her trip?" The question landed like it always did, a fist in the center of his chest. 3 years since the semi-truck ran the red light on Highway 35 and turned Naomi into a memory. 3 years of carefully constructed truth that Zara's mind reshaped into something bearable, a trip not forever, just somewhere far away. Elijah set the plate in front of her, syrup pooling in the pancake valleys. "Mommy's watching over us, Zara, from somewhere bigger than the sky. Like heaven, exactly like heaven." Zara accepted this with a small nod, picking up her fork. "Mrs. Patterson says heaven isn't real. She says when people die, they just stop." Elijah's jaw tightened. He sat down across from her, the cheap kitchen table wobbling. "What do you think?" Zara chewed slowly. "I think Mommy's watching, because sometimes I feel her." "Then that's what matters, what you feel, not what Mrs. Patterson says." She smiled, gap-toothed and radiant. Elijah felt the familiar ache of loving someone so much it terrified him. Zara was all he had left of Naomi. His wrist rested against the table edge. The watch caught Zara's attention, her gaze drawn to the worn leather strap, the scratched crystal. Naomi had saved 2 months to buy it, working double shifts at the diner. It wasn't expensive, Seiko, not Rolex. But she'd wrapped it in newspaper comics and presented it like treasure. Zara reached across the table, one small finger tracing the watch face. "It's pretty." Your mama had good taste. The stack of bills sat 3 inches to the left, held down by the salt shaker. Rent, $850 due in 12 days. Electric, $127. His bank account held $243 until Friday's paycheck. The math didn't work. It never did. But somehow, he made it work anyway. He checked the watch again. 6:15. Time to leave in 30 minutes. At the door, Zara wrapped her arms around him. "Pick me up after school." "Always," Elijah said, and meant it like a vow. Pinnacle Tower rose 48 stories above Harbor Heights like a blade of glass. Elijah had worked here 6 years, ever since Naomi died, and he needed somewhere that paid enough to cover rent plus daycare. $42,000 annually. Facilities technician, which meant he fixed things when they broke and prevented things from breaking in the first place. He badged in through the service entrance at 7:03. The employee lounge sat tucked behind the loading dock, a windowless room with flickering fluorescents. Elijah stowed his lunch and grabbed his tool belt from his locker. The morning assignment sheet waited on the clipboard. HVAC inspection floors 35 through 40. Routine maintenance estimated 3 hours. Elijah signed his name next to the job number and headed for the freight elevator. The doors opened on the 35th floor into a hallway that smelled like new carpet and expensive cologne. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Harbor Heights. Elijah ignored the view. He'd seen it 1,000 times. The HVAC access panel sat behind a locked door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Elijah pulled his master key and stepped into the narrow space where ducts and wiring tangled overhead. He started with the basics. Check the filters. Test the airflow. Verify the temperature readings. The work was methodical, almost meditative. The panel readings spiked wrong. Voltage fluctuation on circuit 7, the main feed to floors 38 through 42. Small variance 0.3 amps, but consistent. Electrical systems didn't fluctuate for no reason. He pulled his phone, taking photos of the readouts, noting the time and location. 6 years of doing this job had taught him to document everything. The door behind him opened. Elijah turned to find Reese Sullivan watching from the hallway. Executive assistant to the COO. 35 years old, sharp enough to cut one of the few people above the 20th floor who'd learned his name. "Morning, Elijah." "Morning, Ms. Sullivan." She leaned against the doorframe, her expression tired. "Find something." "Voltage fluctuation. Probably nothing, but I'll file a report." Reese glanced down the empty hallway, then back at him. Her voice dropped. "You've been here 6 years. Why haven't they promoted you?" Elijah closed the access panel. Same reason they gave Thompson 2.5 minutes for his custody hearing, while Williams got 8. Reese's jaw tightened. "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer that matters." He stepped past her into the hallway. Behind him, Reese's voice followed. "Some numbers don't lie, Elijah, but nobody wants to hear them." The records room sat in the basement, tucked behind the employee cafeteria. Elijah wasn't supposed to be here, but Russell Hayes had given him the master key before retiring last month, pressing it into Elijah's palm with a look that said, everything words couldn't. Elijah needed it now. The voltage fluctuation wasn't random. Someone had installed new equipment on floor 15 without updating the electrical capacity calculations, which meant either incompetence or deliberate concealment. The filing cabinets lined the back wall in gray metal rows. Elijah found the drawer marked Safety Audits, 2023 to 2024, and pulled it open. He flipped through until he found the audit from 8 months ago. The report ran 17 pages, then page 13, a section titled Deferred Maintenance Recommendations. 17 items each stamped with red ink, Defer Pending Budget Review. Elijah photographed every page. HVAC upgrades for floors 12 through 18. Fire suppression system replacement. Emergency lighting battery backup. Each recommendation included cost estimates. Each cost estimate had been circled in pen 1.8 in total. Chicago expansion takes priority. Defer 18 to 24 months. The signature at the bottom belonged to Marcus Cole, Director of Security. The approval signature belonged to Victoria Sterling, CEO. The door behind him opened. Elijah's heart slammed against his ribs. He shoved his phone in his pocket, turning to find Marcus Cole standing in the doorway. "Morrison, what are you doing in the records room?" Elijah forced his breathing steady. Checking maintenance logs, voltage issue on floor 35. Cole stepped inside, closing the door. The room suddenly felt smaller. Cole's gaze tracked to the open filing cabinet, to the safety audit lying exposed. Something flickered behind his eyes, calculation, threat, decision. This area is restricted to administrative personnel. Russell Hayes gave me access before he retired. Hayes no longer works here. His clearances are void. Cole moved closer. Whatever you think you found, Morrison, close it. File your voltage report through the standard channels. Elijah met his gaze. The standard channels seemed to defer a lot of things. Cole's expression didn't change, but something cold slid behind his eyes. Careful, Morrison. You have a daughter. Zara isn't at second grade at Oakwood Elementary. It would be unfortunate if your employment situation became unstable. The threat landed like a fist. Elijah's hands curled at his sides. I understand, sir. Cole nodded. He gestured toward the door. Good. Now get back to work. The summons came 2 days later. Victoria Sterling required maintenance services in her executive office. 48th floor corner suite. Elijah rode the freight elevator up with his tool bag and a work order that said, HVAC malfunction, priority 1. The executive floor smelled different. Leather and expensive wood filtered air that tasted processed and clean. Victoria's assistant gestured toward the closed office door. Ms. Sterling is on a call. She'll signal when you can enter. Please work quietly. Elijah waited, watching through the glass walls as Victoria paced behind her desk. 42 years old, blonde hair pulled back severe enough to hurt, wearing a charcoal suit that made her look carved from stone. She held a phone to her ear, her free hand cutting through the air in sharp gestures. The call ended. Victoria looked directly at Elijah and raised one hand, beckoning him inside. The office swallowed sound. Thick carpet acoustic ceiling tiles. Victoria didn't look at him. The temperature control isn't responding. It's been 78 degrees for 2 days. Elijah moved to the thermostat panel, opening the access cover. The wiring looked standard. He tested the connections. Nothing. The problem was likely in the main system. I'll need to check the mechanical room. This panel is functioning correctly. Victoria grunted acknowledgement. Elijah closed the panel, reaching up to secure the cover plate. His shirt rode up slightly, exposing the watch on his wrist. Victoria's gaze snapped to his wrist like a magnet finding north. Her entire body went rigid. Color drained from her face, then flooded back in a rush. Elijah lowered his arm, tugging the sleeve down. Victoria stood abruptly, chair rolling backward. That watch, how much did it cost? The question landed wrong, too personal. Elijah's throat tightened. It was a gift from my wife, ma'am. Victoria's expression twisted, pain flashing before hardening into something uglier. A gift? Of course. Sentimental attachment to cheap things. How typical. The words hit like a slap. Elijah's jaw clenched. It has value to me. I'm sure it does. The kind of value that keeps you anchored to the past. To dead dreams and cheaper watches. She turned away, dismissing him with her posture. Fix the temperature. And next time, maintain appropriate professional appearance. That includes not wearing accessories that broadcast your circumstances. Elijah stood there, tool bag in hand. Every instinct screamed at him to respond, to defend Naomi's memory. But Zara's face floated in his mind and the stack of unpaid bills. He left without another word. The call came at 11:30. Marcus Cole's voice on the phone, crisp and professional. Morrison, report to the main lobby. Immediately. Elijah was on floor 22, halfway through a filter replacement. He stowed his tools and took the freight elevator down. The descent felt longer than it should have, his stomach dropping with each floor. The lobby opened up, vast and marble, designed to impress. 40 feet of vertical space crystal chandeliers, walls of polished stone. 50 people must have been present. Elijah stepped out and scanned the crowd. He found Marcus near the security desk, standing with Victoria Sterling and 2 executives. Victoria's gaze locked on him the moment he appeared. Marcus gestured him closer. Morrison, over here. The walk across the lobby felt endless. Conversations died as Elijah passed faces turning to track his movement. He recognized colleagues, maintenance crew, admin staff. Their expressions ranged from curious to pitying. This was execution. He stopped 3 feet from Marcus. Victoria stood to Marcus's left, her posture rigid, her hands clasped in front of her. Marcus's voice carried across the marble space. "Mr. Ashford, we need to clarify something about your role here." Elijah's pulse hammered. He kept his expression neutral. "Yes, sir. You're a maintenance technician. Your responsibilities include equipment repair, preventive maintenance, and responding to work orders. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir. Your responsibilities do not include safety auditing, policy review, or questioning executive decisions." "Correct." The trap closed around him. "I was documenting a voltage issue, sir. Standard protocol. You were accessing restricted files. Files you had no authorization to review. I was trying to understand why floor 15. You were exceeding your authority." Marcus cut him off, the interruption deliberate, designed to humiliate. "You were making yourself a problem." Victoria stepped forward. The crowd shifted, a collective intake of breath. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out the folder Elijah had photographed. The safety audit. Her voice carried across the lobby. "Mr. Ashford, I've reviewed your concerns, and I've concluded that you lack the professional judgment to distinguish between actual safety issues and overreach." Elijah's hands curled into fists. Victoria's gaze dropped to his wrist, to the watch. Her expression flickered something raw before hardening back into contempt. "That watch. I told you 2 days ago it was inappropriate." Elijah's chest went tight. "It's my wife's, your late wife's, a relic. A piece of the past you can't let go." She took a step closer. "Clinging to dead things, dead dreams, dead relationships. It's pathetic, Ashford." The lobby went silent. Victoria's gaze hardened. "Your daughter Zara, isn't it 7 years old? She deserves a father who looks forward, who aspires to more than minimum wage and cheap sentiment. Instead, she has a man stuck in the past with a broken watch and broken ambition." The words detonated in Elijah's chest. Blood roared in his ears. He opened his mouth, rage climbing his throat. Then Zara's voice echoed, "Daddy, are we poor now?" And he swallowed every word. When he spoke, his voice came out level, controlled. "My daughter deserves a father who knows right from wrong, Ms. Sterling. And I intend to be that man." Victoria's smile cut cruel and precise. "Not in this company. Not anymore." She turned to Marcus. "Terminate him. Effective immediately." Marcus handed Elijah a cardboard box. "You have 15 minutes to clear your locker. Security will escort you out." The crowd parted as Elijah walked toward the service corridor. At the edge of his vision, he caught Reese Sullivan standing near the elevators, tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed to her mouth. Elijah kept walking. The watch ticked against his wrist. Behind him, Victoria stood in the center of the lobby, her hands trembling so slightly that only someone watching closely would notice. The apartment felt too quiet. Elijah sat at the kitchen table, the cardboard box at his feet, staring at the stack of bills. 2:45 in the afternoon, an hour before he needed to pick up Zara. $42,000 a year gone. He picked up his phone, scrolled through job listings. Most required references. Most wouldn't hire someone terminated for cause. The watch pressed against his wrist. Elijah unbuckled the strap, set it on the table. Naomi had bought this with tips from the diner, 2 months of double shifts condensed into $15. Victoria had called it pathetic. The watch stopped. The second hand froze at the 12, motionless. Elijah's breath caught. He shook his wrist gently. Nothing. The watch remained frozen. Then 3 seconds later, the hand jerked forward. Tick, tick, tick. Elijah's chest cracked open. He sat there, watch in hand, tears streaming down his face in hot, silent tracks. The phone rang. Reese Sullivan's voice came through, shaky. "Elijah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know she would do that. It's not your fault." "It is. I work for them." Her voice broke. "I have something about Victoria, about why she reacted the way she did." Elijah wiped his eyes. I don't want to hear about Victoria Sterling. You need to, because this isn't about you, it's about her husband. The connection stretched taut. What about her husband? Michael Sterling. He died 5 years ago in a construction accident. Safety violations. And Michael, he wore the same watch you do. Same brand, same model. Victoria saw you and she saw him and she couldn't handle it. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Elijah closed his eyes. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, it doesn't. But there's more. I found something in the archives. 6 years of safety complaints. 43 total, all of them buried. Elijah, this isn't isolated. It's systemic. Elijah's eyes snapped open. Send me everything. I can't. Not from my work computer, but I can meet you. Tonight after Zara's asleep, I'll bring hard copies. Where? The coffee shop on Oak and 5th, 9 p.m., and Elijah, be careful. Marcus Cole has eyes everywhere. The call ended. Elijah sat there, the implications spreading through his mind like cracks in ice. 43 complaints, 6 years, a pattern so entrenched it had become policy. He checked the time. 3:07, 23 minutes until Zara's school. Elijah strapped the watch back on and grabbed his keys. At 3:30, Elijah waited by the curb at Oakwood Elementary. Parents in SUVs lined the pickup zone. Kids streamed out with art projects and permission slips. Elijah found Zara. She walked slowly. Bigger, dragging on the ground, her expression closed. When she saw him, something cracked in her composure. She ran the last 10 feet, launching herself into his arms. Elijah caught her holding tight. He didn't ask. He just held her until the shaking stopped. They drove home in silence. Inside the apartment, Elijah made hot chocolate while Zara sat at the kitchen table. The ritual was familiar comfort food. Quiet space, waiting. Finally, her voice small. Daddy? Why doesn't Mrs. Patterson like me? Elijah set the mug in front of her, marshmallows melting. It's not about liking baby girl. It's about fear. Fear of what? Fear that you know things she doesn't. Fear that you won't stay quiet when she wants you to. He sat down across from her. Some people think the world works better when everyone stays in their place. Zara wrapped her hands around the mug. Am I supposed to stay small? No, baby. You're supposed to be exactly who you are. Big and bright and brave enough to tell the truth even when it's hard. Like how you got fired for trying to help people. The question hit harder than it should. Exactly like that. Are you still trying to help even though they fired you? He looked at his daughter, at the gap-toothed trust in her eyes. Yes, baby girl, I'm still trying. Zara smiled, small but certain. Good, because bad people shouldn't win. The call from Russell Hayes came at 8:30 that night after Zara had fallen asleep. Elijah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Morrison, it's Russell Hayes. Elijah straightened. Mr. Hayes, don't call me that. I'm retired. Russell's voice sounded rough. I heard what happened. I'm sorry. You warned me. I did. But that doesn't make it right. Listen, I have something for you, information. The kind that could burn this whole thing down if you're brave enough to use it. Elijah's pulse quickened. What kind of information? The kind I've been collecting for 12 years. Every complaint, every deferred recommendation, every time Marcus Cole chose profit over safety. I couldn't do anything with it, wife with medical bills, kids in college. But you got nothing left to lose. Where? My house. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Come alone, and Morrison, what I'm about to give you will make you a target. Make sure you're ready before you walk through my door. The call ended. Elijah sat in the dark apartment, the only light from the laptop screen. Through Zara's bedroom door, he heard her soft breathing. He thought about Victoria's words. Your daughter deserves better. And for the first time since the lobby humiliation, Elijah allowed himself to consider that maybe Victoria was right, not about him being worthless, but about Zara deserving better. She deserved a world where people like Marcus Cole couldn't bury 43 complaints. The watch ticked against his wrist. Elijah checked the time, 8:41. 19 minutes until his meeting with Reese. He stood, grabbed his jacket, and checked on Zara one last time. He kissed her forehead, whispered a promise, and headed for the door. He locked the door and walked into the night. The watch kept ticking. At 8:50, Elijah knocked on the door across the hall. His neighbor, Mrs. Sullivan, answered, a woman in her mid-50s with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. She'd watched Zara a few times when Elijah worked late, never asking for much in return beyond the occasional help with heavy groceries. "Elijah, everything all right? I need a favor. I have to go out for an hour, maybe two. Can you keep an eye on Zara? She's asleep, so you can just sit on my couch, watch TV. I'll give you my key." Mrs. Sullivan's expression shifted to concern. "Of course, dear. Is everything okay?" "Work stuff. I'll explain later." She nodded, accepting his need for privacy. "Go. I'll take care of her." Elijah handed her his spare key. "Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan, really." "Call me Pauline, for heaven's sake. We're neighbors." She squeezed his arm. "Be safe." The coffee shop on Oak and Fifth smelled like espresso and desperation, the kind of place where grad students nursed single cups for hours. Elijah arrived at 8:57, scanning the scattered tables until he found Reese in the back corner, hunched over a manila envelope. She looked up when he approached, her face drawn tight. No makeup now, no executive polish. Just a woman who'd spent 6 hours debating whether to destroy her career or her conscience. "You came." Elijah slid into the chair across from her. "You thought I wouldn't?" "I thought you'd be smart enough to walk away." Reese pushed the envelope across the scarred table. 6 years of documentation. Complaints filed by 17 different employees. All closed within a week, marked non-critical buried. Elijah opened the envelope. Printouts, photocopies, highlighted sections. Complaint from Clarence Whitman, filed March 2019. Floor 15, electrical panel overheating, potential fire hazard. Resolution defer, pending budget review. The pattern repeated across 43 separate incidents. Average resolution time for complaints filed by white employees, 8.7 days. For Black and Latino employees, 3.2 days. "How did you get this?" Reese's fingers wrapped around her coffee cup. "I've been Victoria's assistant for 8 years. I have access to everything. She trusts me to be discreet. I violated that trust. If she finds out I'm not just fired, I'm blacklisted. Then why risk it? Because I watched her destroy you for trying to save lives. Because every time I close one of these complaints, I become complicit. And I'm done being complicit." Elijah flipped through more pages. Contractor invoices from Cole Enterprises, LLC. Emergency repairs billed at 300% markup. A 12-year pattern of extracting money while letting infrastructure decay. This is criminal fraud. It's worse than that. Reese pulled out another document marked Confidential Board Minutes. Read the date, May 2012. A board meeting where Chairman Thomas Brennan proposed deferring all non-emergency maintenance for 18 months. The vote passed unanimously. Victoria Sterling's signature appeared at the bottom as CFO. Her husband Michael still ran the company then. Elijah's stomach turned. They've been doing this since 2012. Since 1994 if you count the previous ownership. This building is 30 years old. They've been cutting corners since the foundation poured. Michael Sterling tried to change it when he took over in 2010. He pushed for safety upgrades. The board pushed back. 2 years later, he was dead. The implication hung between them, ugly and undeniable. Victoria had lost her husband to the same negligence she now perpetuated. "I need copies of everything." Reese reached into her bag, pulled out a USB drive. "It's all here, plus recordings. Marcus doesn't know I started documenting our conversations 6 months ago." Elijah pocketed the drive. The weight felt heavier than it should. This was ammunition. This was also a target painted on his back. "What are you going to do?" The question pressed against his chest. Elijah thought about Zara asleep in her bed, trusting tomorrow would be safe. He thought about the 847 people who walked into Pinnacle Tower every day, unaware that the building's safety existed only on paper. He thought about Naomi's voice. "Do the right thing. I'm going to burn it all down." Elijah returned home at 10:45 to find Mrs. Sullivan dozing on his couch, late-night television, casting blue light across her peaceful face. He touched her shoulder gently. She startled awake. "Oh, Elijah, I must have drifted off." "Thank you for staying. Everything okay with Zara? Perfect angel. Didn't make a sound." Mrs. Sullivan stood gathering her purse. "Are you all right, dear? You look troubled." Elijah managed a tired smile. "Just work complications, nothing you need to worry about." She paused at the door, her expression knowing in the way of women who'd raised children and buried husbands and learned to read the spaces between words. "If you need anything watching Zara, a hot meal, someone to talk to, you knock on my door. Promise me." "I promise. Thank you, Pauline." After she left, Elijah locked the door and leaned against it, the USB drive heavy in his pocket. He pulled it out, staring at the small piece of plastic that contained 12 years of evidence. 12 years of negligence. 12 years of people trying to do the right thing and getting crushed for it. He walked to Zara's room, pushing the door open quietly. She slept curled around Bigger, her face relaxed and trusting. Elijah watched her breathe for a long moment, memorizing the piece that wouldn't survive what came next. Tomorrow he'd call Russell Hayes, get more evidence, find a lawyer who specialized in whistleblower cases, build a case so airtight they couldn't ignore it. Tomorrow he'd start the fight that would either save lives or destroy what little stability he'd managed to build for Zara. Tonight he let himself hope that brave was enough. The watch ticked steady on his wrist. Elijah checked the time, 10:53. He pulled out his laptop, plugged in the USB drive, and began reading through 6 years of institutional failure. The screen glowed in the darkness. File after file, complaint after complaint. People's names attached to warnings that had been buried, careers that had been ended, voices that had been silenced. Elijah's phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions. Some things are better left alone." He stared at the message, then deleted it. Some things were too important to leave alone. Some fights were worth everything. The watch kept ticking. Naomi's voice whispered in the spaces between seconds. "Do the right thing, even when it costs you." Elijah closed the laptop. Tomorrow would bring Russell's evidence lawyer's decisions that couldn't be undone. Tomorrow would bring consequences he couldn't predict and dangers he couldn't avoid. But tonight, in this quiet apartment with his daughter sleeping safe and the truth finally in his hands, Elijah Ashford allowed himself to believe that sometimes ordinary men could face extraordinary evil and have a chance, however slim, of winning. The watch ticked on. Time kept moving forward, and so would he. Thursday morning arrived with frost on the windows and dread in Elijah's chest. He'd spent the night reading through Reese's documentation, cross-referencing complaints with building codes, his eyes burning from screen glare and the weight of 12 years of institutional negligence condensed into spreadsheets and PDFs. He dropped Zara at school at 8:15, the usual routine stretched tight with unspoken tension. She kissed his cheek, whispered, "I love you, Daddy," and ran toward the building where Mrs. Patterson waited to teach her that some people needed to learn their place. Elijah sat in his car for 10 minutes after she left, staring at Russell Hayes' address on his phone. The USB drive felt like a bomb in his pocket, evidence that could destroy careers, trigger federal investigations, and paint a target on his back so bright that even running wouldn't help. He started the engine. Russell's house sat in the suburbs, a ranch-style relic from the 70s with aluminum siding and a lawn that had given up pretending. Russell answered the door in sweatpants and a faded navy t-shirt, looking 10 years older than his 55 years. Retirement had not been kind. "Morrison, come in." The living room smelled like cigarette smoke and regret. Boxes lined the walls labeled basement and garage and donate. Russell's wife had died 2 years ago, cancer that ate through their savings before it ate through her. Russell gestured toward the kitchen table where a file box sat waiting. Handwritten label. Pinnacle, 2012-2024. 12 years. Russell lowered himself into a chair, his breathing labored. 12 years of watching them choose money over safety. Every time I filed a report, Marcus buried it. Every time I pushed back, the board reminded me I was replaceable. Elijah opened the box. More complaints, more invoices, more emails where executives discussed deferred maintenance like it was a budget line item instead of lives at stake. But deeper in the stack, something worse, engineering reports from 2018 flagging structural concerns on floors 35 through 40. Recommendations for reinforcement. Cost estimate $1.2 million. Status deferred indefinitely. They knew the building was unstable. They knew everything. Russell lit a cigarette, his hands shaking. The HVAC issues you found, that's surface damage. Floor 15 has been storing industrial chemicals without proper permits for 4 months. The fire suppression system on that floor disabled. Marcus ordered it shut down because the sensors kept triggering false alarms from chemical vapors. Elijah's blood went cold. If there's a fire on 14, it spreads to 15. And those chemicals, acetone, methanol, industrial solvents, not just flammable explosive. Russell exhaled smoke. 847 people work in that building on an average day. If something goes wrong during business hours, you're looking at casualties in the dozens, maybe hundreds. The implications crashed through Elijah's mind. This wasn't just fraud. This was negligent homicide waiting to happen. I need to take this to authorities. Russell's laugh came out bitter. You think I didn't try? I called the fire marshal in 2022. He scheduled an inspection. Marcus got 2 weeks' notice, moved the chemicals temporarily past with flying colors. I called OSHA in 2023. They reviewed paperwork, found everything technically compliant because Marcus forged the permits. Then what am I supposed to do with this? Russell leaned forward, his eyes hard despite the exhaustion. You go around the system. Find a lawyer who specializes in whistleblower cases. Contact journalists who cover corporate corruption. Build a case so airtight they can't ignore it, then release it all at once. He stubbed out his cigarette. And you do it fast, because once Marcus knows you have this, he'll come for you, and he doesn't fight fair. Elijah loaded the box into his trunk. Russell's warnings echoing in his skull. The drive back felt longer than it should, every minute wasted, while 847 people walked into a death trap. He called information from the car, got transferred 3 times before reaching someone who could help. Blackwell and Associates. Mr. Blackwell, my name is Elijah Ashford. I need a lawyer who handles whistleblower cases. What kind of case? Corporate negligence, safety violations, possible fraud, and evidence that proves all of it. Silence stretched across the line. Then, how much evidence? 12 years worth. Garrett's exhale carried weight. Come to my office. 3 p.m. today. Bring everything. Elijah picked up Zara at 3:30, already running late for his meeting with Garrett. She climbed into the car quieter than usual, bigger clutched tight against her chest. How was school, baby girl? Zara stared out the window. Mrs. Patterson moved my seat. Elijah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Why? She said, I ask too many questions. That I need to learn when to be quiet. Zara's voice came out small, uncertain, in a way that made Elijah's chest ache. She put me in the back corner, away from everyone. The coded language landed like a punch. Isolation disguised as classroom management. Punishment for refusing to be invisible. What were you asking about? We were learning about the Civil War. She said it was about states' rights. I said my book at home says it was about slavery. She got mad. Elijah pulled over into a pharmacy parking lot, turning to face his daughter. Zara, look at me. She turned her eyes wide and worried. You were right. The Civil War was about slavery. That's not opinion, it's fact. And you should never apologize for knowing the truth. He reached over, taking her small hand in his. Mrs. Patterson is wrong. Not just about history. About you needing to be quiet. You have a voice. And you're supposed to use it, even if it makes people mad, especially if it makes people mad, because sometimes the most important truths are the ones people don't want to hear. Zara absorbed this, her expression serious. Like how you told the truth about the building and got fired. Can Exactly like that. She squeezed his hand. Then I'll keep telling the truth too. Elijah pulled her into a hug, pressing his face against her hair. That's my girl. Garrett Blackwell's office occupied the third floor of a converted brownstone downtown. 45 years old, sharp suit, sharper eyes. He listened to Elijah's story without interrupting, taking notes in a leather-bound journal that looked expensive enough to fund a week's groceries. When Elijah finished, Garrett leaned back in his chair. Let me see the documentation. Elijah handed over the USB drive and Russell's file box. Garrett spent 20 minutes scrolling through files, his expression cycling from interested to concerned to something approaching rage. This is ironclad. 43 complaints over 6 years, statistical disparity in resolution times, forged permits with signatures from retired officials, contractor fraud. Garrett looked up. You could bring down the entire board with this. Will it stop them before someone gets hurt? Garrett's expression shifted to something like pity. That's the problem with whistleblower cases. They move slowly. We file complaints with OSHA, the Justice Department state regulators. They investigate, which takes months. They build cases, which takes more months. Meanwhile, Pinnacle operates business as usual. People could die while we wait for bureaucracy. I know. And I'll do everything I can to expedite. But I need you to understand what you're walking into. Garrett closed his laptop. Marcus Cole will come after you. They'll try to discredit you, intimidate you, make your life so miserable you drop the case. You'll be blacklisted in your industry. You might face retaliation that crosses into illegal territory. I have a daughter to protect. Then you need to decide if this fight is worth the risk to her. Garrett's tone gentled. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying go in with eyes open. Whistleblowers don't get happy endings as often as they should. Elijah thought about Zara in the back corner of Mrs. Patterson's classroom. About 847 people trusting that someone had checked the building codes. About Naomi's voice, do the right thing. I'm in, whatever it takes. Garrett nodded slowly. Then let's build a case they can't ignore. The investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Elijah driving Uber at night while Zara slept at Mrs. Sullivan's apartment. 6 weeks of phone calls with former employees recording testimonies with shaking hands and growing fury. 6 weeks of learning just how deep the corruption ran. Week 1, he contacted Clarence Whitman, the electrician who'd reported the floor 15 overheating in 2019. Clarence had been fired 3 months after filing his complaint told his position was being eliminated due to budget cuts. He'd found new work eventually, but the gap in employment had cost him his house. I reported it because it was dangerous, Clarence told Elijah over coffee at a diner in South Harbor Heights. Marcus called me in, said I was creating liability issues, said if I valued my job I'd focus on my assigned tasks. When I kept pushing, they manufactured a reason to let me go. Week 2 brought Diane Fletcher, the engineer who'd flagged HVAC inadequacies in 2020. She'd been offered $15,000 and an NDA to leave quietly. She'd taken it because her mother needed surgery and insurance wouldn't cover it all. I knew it was wrong. Diane said, her voice tight with shame. But I had to choose. My principles or my mother's life. What would you have done? Elijah had no answer that didn't sound like judgment. Week 3 through 5, he dove into the technical details. Building codes, fire safety regulations, OSHA standards. He wrote a 14-page report citing specific violations, NFPA 1 requirements for sprinkler systems, IBC section 1003 for emergency exits, Title 29, CEFR for chemical storage. The work consumed him. He'd wake at 5:30 to make breakfast for Zara, drop her at school, spend 8 hours researching and documenting, pick her up at 3:30, help with homework, make dinner, wait for her to sleep, then drive Uber until midnight to pay rent. His savings account read $89 by week 5. Job applications went out daily, facilities, positions at hospitals, schools, office parks. Half never responded. The other half requested references he didn't have. Mrs. Sullivan became his lifeline. She'd watch Zara during evening Uber shifts, never asking for more than the occasional help with her groceries. Sometimes Elijah would come home to find she'd left a casserole in his fridge, refusing payment with the wave of a hand. "Neighbors help neighbors," she'd say. "That's how the world's supposed to work." By week 6, Garrett had compiled everything into a formal complaint. 347 pages of evidence, witness testimony, technical analysis, and documented fraud. They filed with the Department of Justice OSHA and the Harbor Heights building inspector. "Now we wait," Garrett said. "The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn." Wednesday of week 7, the black SUV appeared. Elijah was picking up Zara from school when he noticed it parked across the street, engine running, tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. He felt the attention like pressure against his skull. He helped Zara into the car, his movements casual despite the adrenaline spiking his pulse. "Buckle up, baby girl." The SUV's passenger door opened. 2 men stepped out, both wearing expensive casual clothing that screamed private security. The lead was tall military bearing scarred knuckles visible even from 50 feet. His partner was shorter, stockier, with a face that had seen violence and delivered it. They didn't approach, just stood there, making sure Elijah understood. "We know where your daughter goes to school." Elijah's vision narrowed. He stepped out of his car, hands visible and empty. "Daddy!" Zara's voice carried through the window, confused and frightened. "Stay in the car, baby. Lock the doors." Zara obeyed, her eyes wide. Elijah walked toward the SUV, every instinct screaming danger. The tall one spoke, first voice carrying just far enough. Mr. Ashford, we usually, we need a moment." "You need to leave, now. We represent interested parties who'd prefer you exercise discretion. Stop meeting with lawyers. Stop making phone calls. Stop looking for problems." Elijah stopped 10 feet away. "I don't take orders from men who threaten children." The tall one smiled, empty of humor. "We're not threatening anyone. We're simply observing that children are vulnerable. Accidents happen. Traffic doesn't always stop for crossing guards." He let the implications hang. Tragedies, but preventable when people make smart choices. Elijah's hands curled into fists. Every muscle screamed to rush forward to make them hurt, but violence was their game, and they were professionals. "I've filed a police report. They know who I am and what I'm investigating. If anything happens to me or my daughter, they'll know where to look." The tall one's smile widened. "Police reports are public record, Mr. Ashford. We've read yours. Very thorough. Doesn't mention any specific threats, because we haven't made any." "Have we?" They climbed back into the SUV and drove away. Elijah stood in the parking lot, shaking with rage and fear. He returned to his car, pulling Zara into the front seat and holding her tight enough to feel her heartbeat. "Daddy, who were those men?" "Bad people trying to Are you scared?" The honest answer was yes. Terrified. But Zara needed strength more than truth. "I'm angry, and I'm going to make sure they can't hurt us." Thursday morning, Reese called, her voice edged with panic. "Elijah, I found something. The permits Marcus filed for floor 15, they're fake." Elijah grabbed a pen. "How do you know?" "I called the city. They have no record of any chemical storage permit for 447 Harbor Boulevard. None. Not pending, not approved, nothing." Her breathing came fast. "I asked about Deputy Fire Marshal Frank Morgan. He's the one who supposedly signed off. He retired 3 years ago, in 2021. His signature is all over documents dated 2024. The implications detonated in Elijah's mind. Not just negligence. Active fraud. Federal crimes. "Does Marcus know you called?" "I used a burner phone from across town." "But Elijah, if this is fake, what else is fake? How deep does this go?" Elijah pulled up Russell's files, cross-referencing dates. Half the inspection reports showed Deputy Fire Marshal Morgan's signature after his retirement. Building permits approved by officials who'd left office years before. It goes all the way down. This whole building is built on fraudulent compliance. Reese made a sound between a laugh and a sob. 847 people, every day, trusting someone checked. I'm taking everything to the FBI, today. Wait. If you go now, they'll start an investigation that takes months. Marcus will destroy evidence, threaten witnesses. Reese's voice steadied. You need something big enough they can't ignore it. Something that forces immediate action. Like what? I don't know, but it needs to happen soon. Because if there's another incident, if the electrical system fails, if there's a fire, people are going to die. Friday afternoon at 2:47, the news alert arrived. Small fire at Pinnacle Tower contained. Floor 14, no injuries reported. Elijah's blood froze. He called the fire department immediately. This is Elijah Ashford. I'm calling about the Pinnacle Tower fire. The dispatcher's voice came back professional. The fire was contained. Building management reports no structural damage. Did you check floor 15, the chemicals stored there? Sir, building management indicated floor 15 is unoccupied storage. The suppression system on floor 15 is disabled, has been for months, and it's not unoccupied, it's industrial solvents. Acetone methanol stored without permits. Silence. Then, Sir, do you have documentation? Yes, 12 years of it. Safety complaints, forged permits, evidence of systematic fraud. Send it to our investigation unit. They'll review and determine if follow-up is warranted. That could take weeks. If there's another fire, Sir, we can only inspect what building management permits. Unless you have a court order, we need their cooperation. Elijah hung up. Protocol existed to protect buildings like Pinnacle Tower, to give people like Marcus Cole time to hide evidence. He stared at the news article, minor electrical malfunction, modern safety systems. No cause for concern. The comments section filled with relief. Thank God no one was hurt. These old buildings always have wiring issues. None of them knew. None of them understood that floor 14's fire was a warning shot. Elijah opened his email, started typing addresses, media contacts, city officials, FBI field office. Every journalist who'd covered corporate corruption. Subject: Pinnacle Tower. Imminent danger. Body: I am a former facilities technician at Pinnacle Holdings. I have evidence of systematic safety violations, forged permits, and criminal fraud spanning 12 years. A fire occurred today that nearly reached chemical storage on floor 15. Without immediate intervention, the next fire will result in mass casualties. He attached every file, every complaint, every forged permit, every email where executives chose profit over lives. His finger hovered over send. Once he pressed it, there was no taking it back. Marcus would come for him. The board would destroy him. Behind him, Zara's bedroom door creaked. She padded into the living room. Bigger tucked under her arm. What you doing, Daddy? Trying to keep people safe. The people at your old building. Yeah, baby. Zara climbed onto the couch beside him. Even though they were mean to you, even though, because it's the right thing, because it's the right thing. Zara nodded, accepting this with simple faith. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. He pressed send before fear could override conscience. The email whooshed into the void, carrying evidence that could topple empires or disappear into bureaucracy. His phone buzzed. Text from Garrett. Got your message. Good call going to media. Forces their hand. Another buzz. Unknown number. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Elijah deleted the second message. He stood, checked on Zara, then moved to the window. The street looked normal, cars, neighbors, walking dogs, everyday rhythm. The watch ticked steady. Naomi's voice whispered, You did the right thing, even when it costs you. Saturday and Sunday crawled past with excruciating slowness. Elijah kept Zara close, taking her to the park, the library, anywhere with crowds and witnesses. He slept in 3-hour bursts, waking at every sound, checking locks obsessively. Monday morning brought the first response. The Harbor Heights Tribune called at 7 a.m. a reporter named Lisa Park, who'd covered the mayor's corruption scandal last year. Mr. Ashford, I received your email. I'd like to meet. Today, if possible. They met at a coffee shop downtown at noon, Zara coloring at the table while Lisa reviewed documents on her laptop. 40 years old, sharp eyes, the kind of reporter who'd learned to recognize truth when bureaucracy tried to bury it. "This is explosive," Lisa said after 20 minutes. "Forged permits, statistical disparity, and complaint resolution contractor fraud. If I can verify the permits independently, I can run this story tomorrow." "Will it make them shut down the building?" Lisa's expression shifted to something like sympathy. "It'll put pressure on, public outcry, but actually shutting down a major commercial property that requires regulatory action. The story creates momentum, but it doesn't guarantee speed. People work there, every day, trusting someone check the exits." "I know." Lisa closed her laptop. "Which is why I'm running this story. Because the public has a right to know when their safety is being gambled with." The article hit Tuesday morning's front page, Pinnacle Tower, decades of deferred safety forged permits. Lisa had done her homework, contacted the fire marshal's office, verified Morgan's retirement, obtained public records showing the discrepancies. The story included photos of the building quotes from former employees and a detailed timeline of violations. Elijah's phone exploded with calls. Other reporters wanting interviews, former colleagues offering support or recrimination, anonymous threats that he forwarded to the police knowing they'd do nothing. At 8:15 Tuesday morning, as Elijah drove Zara to school, his phone rang. FBI. "Mr. Ashford, this is Special Agent Dana Morrison with the Boston Field Office. We're opening a formal investigation into Pinnacle Holdings based on your complaint. We'd like you to come in for an interview, today, if possible." Elijah's chest loosened for the first time in days. "Yes, absolutely. What time?" 2 p.m., Federal Building downtown. Bring all your documentation. The interview lasted 4 hours. Special Agent Morrison and her partner, Agent Reeves, walked Elijah through every complaint, every forged signature, every deferred repair. They recorded his testimony, took copies of his evidence, and asked questions that suggested they understood the gravity. "How confident are you in the authenticity of these documents?" Morrison asked. "Completely. I know the people who filed these complaints. I've verified the signatures on the forged permits against public records. Everything checks out." Morrison exchanged a look with Reeves. "Mr. Ashford, I want to be honest with you. Building a federal case takes time. We need to verify everything independently, interview witnesses, establish chain of custody for evidence. We're talking months before we can bring charges." "Months?" Elijah's voice came out strained. "What about the building? What about the people working there right now?" "We'll coordinate with local building inspectors to expedite their review. But we can't force a building closure without due process. Property rights, economic impact, there are procedures." "Procedures?" Elijah stood his chair, scraping against linoleum. "People could die while you follow procedures." Morrison's expression hardened with something like frustration. "I understand your concern, but we can't operate outside the law even to prevent harm. The best we can do is work as fast as possible within the system." Elijah left the federal building at 6:15 p.m., the sun already setting. His faith in institutions shattered one more time. He picked up Zara from Mrs. Sullivan's apartment. She'd watched her all afternoon, refusing payment as always, and drove home through streets that looked the same, but felt different. At home, Zara ate leftover spaghetti while Elijah stared at his laptop, refreshing news sites obsessively. The Tribune story had been picked up by regional outlets. Harbor Heights City Council was calling for emergency building inspections. Pinnacle Holdings had released a statement denying all allegations, claiming full compliance with safety regulations. Marcus Cole had been quoted, "These accusations come from a disgruntled former employee with a history of insubordination. We stand behind our safety record and welcome any official review." Elijah's phone buzzed. Text from Reese Building Inspector scheduled for Thursday. "Marcus already moving chemicals off floor 15. They'll pass inspection and claim vindication." Another text, "I'm sorry. I thought truth would matter more." Elijah typed back, "Truth matters, just not as fast as it should." Tuesday night, Elijah lay awake staring at the ceiling. Zara asleep in the next room, the watch ticking on his nightstand. He'd done everything right. Documented evidence, contacted authorities, gone to the media, followed every proper channel. And tomorrow, 847 people would walk into Pinnacle Tower, and he'd done everything possible, except guarantee they'd walk out. His phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m., unknown number. He almost ignored it, then something made him answer. Victoria Sterling's voice came through barely above a whisper. "Mr. Ashford, I know I have no right to call you." Elijah sat up. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important. What's important is that I read the Tribune article, and I want you to know I believe you. About the violations, about everything." Her voice cracked. "I've been going through Michael's old files. He tried to warn the board 5 years ago, tried to force upgrades. They voted him down. 3 months later, he was dead." Elijah's grip tightened on the phone. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've spent 5 years becoming exactly what killed him, and I won't let it continue." Victoria's breathing came ragged. "Tomorrow I'm calling an emergency board meeting. I'm going to recommend immediate building closure pending full safety audit. And I'm going to tell them why, all of it, the deferred maintenance, the forged permits, everything. They'll remove you as CEO. I know. But maybe that's what I deserve." Silence stretched between them. "I'm sorry. For what I did to you. For what I said about your daughter. I was cruel because seeing your watch made me remember everything I'd lost and everything I'd become to avoid feeling that loss again." Elijah thought about hanging up, about letting Victoria face her demons alone. But something in her voice, raw and terrified and human, made him pause, made him, "Closing the building is the right thing to do. Will that make up for—" "No. Nothing makes up for destroying someone in public. Nothing makes up for negligence that kills people. But it's a start. It's you choosing to be the person your husband thought you could be instead of the person grief turned you into." Victoria's breath hitched. "Thank you for answering, for listening, for not—" "Don't thank me. Just close the building. Keep people safe. That's all that matters now." The call ended. Elijah set down his phone and lay back staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, Victoria would recommend closure. Tomorrow, the board would probably refuse. Tomorrow, 847 people would walk into a building held together by paperwork, lies. Tomorrow, Elijah would have done absolutely everything within his power, and it still might not be enough. The watch ticked on his nightstand. Steady. Relentless. Naomi's gift marking time while he waited to see if truth mattered more than profit, if courage counted for anything when systems moved too slowly to save lives. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight he'd done everything possible. It would have to be enough. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of stillness that preceded storms. Elijah woke at 5:30 to find his inbox flooded with responses, 3 more journalists requesting interviews, 2 attorneys offering representation. 1 automated reply from OSHA acknowledging receipt and providing a case number that felt like filing paperwork on the Titanic. The news cycle had already moved on. The Tribune's follow-up ran page 7. Pinnacle Holdings denies safety allegations, welcomes inspection. And the morning shows pivoted to a celebrity divorce and congressional gridlock. 847 people would read those headlines and trust that someone had verified safety, that buildings in America didn't just explode. Elijah made breakfast with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Pancakes again, because routine was armor. Zara sat drawing elephants with wings, her imagination untroubled by adult knowledge that some catastrophes couldn't be prevented. She looked up when he set the plate down. "You're worried about the people at the building." Not a question. Elijah sat down. "I am." "But you sent all the papers. You told the important people." "I did. So now they'll fix it, right?" The faith in her voice cracked something in his chest. He wanted to promise, yes, the important people would fix it. Instead, he took her small hand. "I hope so, baby girl." Zara squeezed his fingers. "I think they will, because you're brave. And brave people make other people brave too." She returned to her pancakes, conversation forgotten. Elijah watched her eat, memorizing the moment morning light syrup on her chin, absolute certainty that her father could fix anything. The watch read 6:15. In 8.5 hours, he'd know if brave was enough. Victoria stood in the Pinnacle Tower lobby at 7:30 a.m., coffee in hand, watching employees stream through revolving doors. She recognized most faces: the accountant who always arrived early, the paralegal who wore too much perfume, the IT specialist who stopped for donuts every Tuesday. 847 people. Marcus had provided the exact headcount yesterday when she'd questioned capacity. She hadn't explained why she suddenly cared about occupancy numbers. Her phone buzzed. Text from Thomas Brennan, emergency board meeting. 8 a.m. Conference room. Your request. Victoria's chest tightened. Last night's call to Elijah Ashford had kept her awake until 3 a.m., rehearsing the words she'd need to convince the board to close the building. Rehearsing the confession that would end her career. Marcus appeared beside her, materializing from the security office. We need to discuss the inspection scheduled for Thursday. Victoria's grip tightened on her coffee. What about it? The chemicals are being relocated today. Truck arrives at 3 p.m. Everything moved by 6 permits filed by end of week. The inspector will find full compliance. Permits? Victoria's voice came out sharper than intended. Or more forgeries? Marcus's expression flickered calculation assessment. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm saying you've been forging inspection documents for years. That Deputy Fire Marshal Morgan retired in 2021 but keeps signing permits dated 2024. That this building is one spark away from catastrophe, and you've spent more energy hiding it than fixing it. Silence expanded between them. Around them, employees moved through the lobby in morning patterns, oblivious. Marcus's voice dropped. With respect, you approved every budget that deferred those upgrades. You signed off on Chicago expansion knowing it meant delaying repairs. If you're developing a conscience, remember your fingerprints are all over this. The truth landed like a fist. Victoria felt it in her ribs. She thought about Michael's watch in her desk drawer, frozen at 2:17. The exact moment the paramedics called time of death. Then maybe it's time I started washing them clean. Floor 15 is evacuated immediately. Full safety audit by independent contractors, and Marcus find another job. You're done here. His jaw tightened, fury bleeding through professional composure. You can't fire me. I report to the board. Then I'll have them fire you. Either way, you're finished. Victoria turned to walk away, then paused. And Marcus, if anything happens to Elijah Ashford or his daughter, every forged permit, every buried complaint, every illegal order ends up on the DA's desk with your name highlighted. She walked toward the executive elevator, heart hammering. Behind her, Marcus stood frozen, his carefully constructed empire crumbling. The board meeting started at 8 a.m. sharp. Thomas Brennan presided from the head of the table, 72 years old and still sharp enough to cut. 6 other board members flanked him, their faces uniformly skeptical. Victoria sat to Brennan's right tablet, open to financial projections that suddenly felt obscene. Marcus stood near the door, his role enforcement disguised as security. Brennan opened with quarterly earnings. Revenue up 12%. Stock climbing. The numbers painted success while hiding rot underneath. Then Victoria's emergency item. Brennan's gaze settled on her. You called this meeting. What's so urgent it couldn't wait for our regular session? Victoria stood, her legs unsteady. She'd prepared a speech, careful language, strategic framing, corporate speak that cushioned impact. Instead, she heard herself say, "We need to close the building. Today. Immediately." The room went silent. Brennan's expression shifted from curious to hostile. Excuse me. Pinnacle Tower has systematic safety violations dating back 12 years. Deferred maintenance, forged permits, disabled fire suppression on floor 15 where we're storing industrial chemicals without proper authorization. Victoria's voice strengthened. I've reviewed the evidence. It's credible. It's damning. And if we don't act, people will die. Patricia Morrison leaned forward. What evidence from whom? From Elijah Ashford, the maintenance technician I fired 3 months ago. He documented 43 safety complaints that were buried. He has engineering reports showing structural concerns. He has proof of forged permits signed by officials who'd already retired. Brennan's face darkened. The disgruntled employee making baseless allegations. We've already addressed this. Marcus confirmed. Marcus has been forging documents for years. Victoria cut him off the interruption deliberate. Deputy Fire Marshal Morgan retired in 2021. His signature appears on permits dated 2024. The city has no record of applications for Floor 15 chemical storage. This isn't about a disgruntled employee. This is about institutional fraud we've been complicit in. Marcus stepped forward. Ms. Sterling, I think you're overwrought. The stress of the media attention. Sit down, Marcus. Victoria didn't look at him. You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out after this meeting. Marcus's face went white with fury, but he stayed silent. Patricia Morrison's voice cut through the tension. Victoria, even if these allegations are true, and I'm not conceding they are closing the building, has massive financial implications. Lease obligations, lost revenue, legal liability. We're talking millions. We're talking about lives. Victoria pulled up a file on her tablet. My husband, Michael, tried to warn this board 5 years ago. He pushed for safety upgrades. You voted him down because the Chicago expansion was more profitable. 3 months later, he was dead in a construction accident caused by the same negligence we're perpetuating here. The words hung like accusation. Brennan's expression hardened. Your personal grief doesn't constitute evidence of systemic problems. Then let's talk evidence. Victoria's voice turned to steel. Elijah Ashford sent his documentation to the FBI, OSHA, and the media. There's an active federal investigation. The Harbor Heights Tribune published details yesterday. Thursday's building inspection, Marcus was planning to move chemicals temporarily and forge compliance. But the FBI already has the real permits, the real complaints, the real pattern. She met Brennan's eyes. We can close the building voluntarily and cooperate with investigators, show good faith, potentially mitigate criminal liability, or we can wait for federal agents to shut us down while we're indicted for negligent homicide. Silence. The board members exchanged glances. Calculation, fear, the rapid mental math of self-preservation. Brennan leaned back. You're asking us to shut down our flagship property based on allegations from a fired employee and your personal vendetta. I'm asking you to prevent people from dying. Victoria's voice cracked. I'm asking you to be better than I've been for 5 years. Better than you've been for 12. We made these choices. We're responsible. And if we don't act now, blood will be on our hands. Patricia Morrison spoke carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Immediate evacuation. Building closure pending independent safety audit. Full cooperation with federal investigators. Settlement fund for victims of our negligence. Victoria paused. And my resignation as CEO. Effective immediately. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, arguing, some board members standing. Brennan shouted for order, his face purple with rage. Victoria sat down, her part finished. She'd done everything she could. The rest was up to people who'd spent decades choosing profit over principle. The vote came 30 minutes later. 4 in favor of closure. 4 opposed. Brennan's tie-breaking vote. Motion fails. We proceed with scheduled inspection. Meeting adjourned. Victoria walked out, knowing she'd tried and failed. Knowing that 847 people would walk through those doors tomorrow while she'd been unable to stop it. At 2:47 p.m., the world ended. Elijah was at home, laptop open to job listings he couldn't focus on. The news alert came first. Breaking explosion at Pinnacle Tower Harbor Heights. Then push notification with shaky footage, smoke billowing from the building's midsection. People running, sirens screaming. Elijah's vision tunneled. His hands moved on autopilot, Key's wallet phone, while his mind screamed denials. Not yet. Not before evacuation, not while 847 people trusted someone had checked. He ran to his car, fumbled the keys, dropped them, grabbed them with shaking hands. The engine started on the third try. He pulled into traffic without checking mirrors, cutting off a sedan. Radio news filled in details. Explosion floor 14, fire spreading to 15 building, management evacuating cause, unknown casualties, unreported. Floor 15. The chemicals Marcus promised to move at 3 p.m. The disabled fire suppression. The ticking bomb Elijah had documented and reported and screamed about. They hadn't listened fast enough. Pinnacle Tower appeared through the windshield like a wound. Smoke poured from floors 14 through 16, black and toxic, visible from half a mile away. Emergency vehicles choked the streets, fire trucks, ambulances, police creating perimeter. Elijah abandoned his car 3 blocks out running. His lungs burned. His legs felt disconnected. The watch bounced against his wrist, marking time while people trapped inside ran out of it. He reached the perimeter at 3:02. A uniformed officer tried to stop him, but Elijah pushed past, ducking under police tape, sprinting toward the entrance until hands grabbed his shoulders. Captain Dwight Sullivan stood there, 50 years old, built like a fire hydrant, face streaked with soot. Civilian, get behind the line. I know this building, 6 years maintenance, every exit, every Sullivan's expression shifted, recognition cutting through crisis. You're Ashford, the one who sent the emails. Yes, the main stairwell is compromised, flames cut it off, but there's maintenance access, east side floor 3 entrance runs to 35. Sullivan processed this in microseconds. He turned, shouting to his deputy. East side maintenance shaft, floor 3, redirect crews. Around them, people streamed from the building, coughing, crying, covered in dust. Office workers in torn suits, security guards helping injured colleagues, chaotic triage. Elijah scanned faces looking for Victoria despite the hatred churning his gut. He found her on a news monitor, live footage from inside the lobby where she stood directing evacuees toward exits. White blouse, torn blood darkening from a cut above her eye. The monitor flickered. A ceiling section collapsed in the background, blocking the path Victoria had sent people down. She turned, seeing the obstruction, then looked at the camera with an expression beyond fear into acceptance. She was trapped. 3 other employees with her, pinned by debris. Sullivan saw it too. Jesus, that's the CEO. Elijah's throat closed. Every cell screamed at him to walk away, to let Victoria face consequences of 12 years' negligence. To call it justice. Then he heard Zara's voice. When you know something's wrong, you have to help. His watch stopped. The second hand froze at the 3, motionless and silent. Elijah felt it like physical touch. Naomi's hand on his shoulder, her voice in his ear. The watch started again, tick, tick, tick. Elijah turned to Sullivan. I'm going in. Absolutely not. You're civilian. I know the layout better than your crews. I can get to them through maintenance corridors they don't know exist. Elijah pulled away. 3 people with her. If we wait for teams to figure it out, they're dead. He ran toward the entrance before Sullivan could stop him. The lobby hit like a furnace. Heat radiating from above, smoke thick enough to taste metal. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. Elijah pulled his shirt over mouth and nose, breathing through fabric. He moved low muscle memory, guiding him toward the maintenance corridor behind the security office. A voice cut through Cal. Ashford, what the hell are you doing here? Marcus Cole stood near the elevator's tablet, still clutched in one hand. His suit was immaculate, his hair perfect, his expression frozen between rage and disbelief. There are people trapped, I'm getting them out. You're going to get yourself killed. Leave it to professionals. Elijah kept moving. The professionals don't know where the maintenance access is, I do. Marcus grabbed his arm, spinning him around. You think you're a hero? Everything happening right now is because you couldn't leave well enough alone. 9 people dead on floor 15. Their blood is on your hands as much as mine. The number hit like a bullet. 9 dead. 9 people who'd walked into work trusting someone had checked. Elijah's voice came out hoarse. Then I better make sure no one else joins them. He pushed past Marcus toward the maintenance corridor. Behind him, Marcus shouted something lost beneath the building's groan. The corridor was clearer, designed for airflow that now pulled smoke through ventilation. Elijah navigated by memory, left at the junction, down 3 steps through authorized access only. The vertical shaft opened before him. Metal ladder running up the wall, emergency lights every 20 feet, the building's skeleton exposed. He climbed. Each rung brought him closer to Victoria, closer to whatever version of himself waited on the other side. The lobby access opened on the mezzanine level behind the collapsed section. Elijah emerged into smoke so thick he couldn't see 3 feet. He dropped to his knees where air was clearer. Victoria Sterling, can you hear me? Movement in gray. A figure materialized. Bethany Palmer, 28. Her leg twisted wrong. Behind her, Owen Garrett and Shelby Brennan huddled together. And Victoria. CEO billionaire, the woman who'd destroyed him 3 months ago. She knelt next to Bethany, one hand pressing against a wound on the younger woman's leg. Victoria's eyes found him through smoke. Shock registered, then confusion, then something that might have been shame. Ashford. Elijah moved toward them, assessing with clinical detachment. Steel beam across Bethany's leg. Ceiling above fractured, hanging by rebar already bending. 2 minutes before the whole section came down. Why are you here after what I did? Shut up and help me. Elijah grabbed metal pipe from debris, wedging it under the beam. I need leverage. When I lift you, pull her out. Victoria didn't move, frozen by disbelief. Elijah's voice cut sharper than smoke. I didn't come back for you, Ms. Sterling. I came back because my daughter needs to believe good people still exist. Now, are you going to help, or am I wasting my time? The words detonated something in Victoria's chest. She scrambled into position, hands gripping Bethany's shoulders. Owen and Shelby moved to help. On 3, 1, the building shuddered, violent tremor sending fresh debris raining. Elijah adjusted his grip muscles, screaming. 2, his watch crystal shattered, concrete struck his wrist, spider-webbing glass that had survived 6 years. The mechanism underneath kept ticking, visible through fractured lens. Naomi's gift broken, but refusing to quit. 3, Elijah pushed with everything he had. The beam shifted, groaning metal on concrete. Victoria pulled Owen and Shelby, adding strength, dragging Bethany free as the beam crashed down. Bethany screamed, leg clearly fractured. Victoria shrugged off her blazer, wrapping the wound with shaking hands. The ceiling cracked wider. Rebar popped free with sounds like rifle shots. Elijah grabbed Bethany under the arms. We move now, or we die here. They formed a chain, Elijah supporting Bethany, Victoria on her other side. Owen and Shelby following. The smoke was thicker heat, building to levels that made breathing feel like swallowing glass. Where are we going? Victoria's voice came out raw. Maintenance corridor, east side. 50 feet. I don't know where. I do. He led them through smoke and chaos, navigating by touch and memory, counting steps. Bethany's weight pressed against his shoulder, her breathing shallow. Behind him, Victoria matched his pace, her presence somehow steadying him despite everything unresolved. They reached the corridor access. Elijah pulled the door open, shoving Bethany through, helping the others follow. The space beyond was clearer, emergency lighting, functional air, breathable. Victoria collapsed against the wall chest, heaving mascara streaked down her face in black trails. She stared at Elijah, expression, cycling through emotions too fast to catalog. You saved me. After everything I did, after what I said about your daughter. Elijah met her gaze. I didn't save you for you. I saved you because doing the right thing matters more than revenge. Because my daughter asked me if bad people win, and I told her they only win if good people do nothing. I am a bad person. Victoria's voice barely above whisper. I knew about violations. I signed off on deferred maintenance. I chose profits over lives. Her hands trembled against concrete. I lost my husband to negligence. And instead of fixing the system, I became what killed him. The confession hung raw and bleeding. Elijah should have felt vindicated, should have thrown her words back. Instead, he thought about Michael Sterling's watch in her drawer, about grief twisting people into unrecognizable shapes. You're right. You are responsible. You and Marcus and the board and everyone who knew and did nothing. Elijah's voice gentled despite himself. But you're here now, helping evacuate instead of running. That doesn't erase what you did, but it's a start. Victoria's face crumpled. Tears carved clean lines through soot, years of armor cracking. How do I fix this? How do I make it right? You can't fix 9 people being dead. You can't undo 12 years. Elijah stood helping Bethany up with Owen's support. But you can tell the truth. Cooperate with investigators. Take responsibility instead of hiding behind lawyers. You can be the person Michael Sterling thought you were capable of becoming. The building shuddered again. Somewhere above, another section surrendered. We need to move. Elijah led them down the corridor toward the exit. They burst into daylight at 3:17 p.m. Too bright, too loud, too full of people who'd escaped while others hadn't. Medics swarmed immediately, pulling Bethany onto a stretcher, checking Victoria's pupils, wrapping thermal blankets around Owen and Shelby. Elijah stumbled away, legs threatening to buckle. Captain Sullivan caught him by the shoulders. You crazy son of a bitch, you made it. How many casualties? Sullivan's expression darkened. 9 confirmed dead on 15, 38 injured. Still searching for 17 missing. 17 people. 17 families about to receive calls that would shatter their worlds. A commotion near the perimeter caught his attention. Mrs. Sullivan rushed through the police line, dragging Zara by the hand. His daughter's face was streaked with tears, eyes wild with fear. Daddy. Zara broke free, sprinting across broken pavement, launching herself into his arms hard enough to knock him backward. Elijah caught her holding on like she was the only solid thing in a liquid universe. You're okay? You're okay. Her words came muffled against his shoulder, repeated like prayer. I'm okay, baby girl, I'm okay. Mrs. Sullivan reached them breathless. She saw the news at school, went hysterical. I couldn't keep her home, she was screaming. She needed to see you. Elijah tightened his grip on Zara. Over her shoulder, he saw Victoria being loaded into an ambulance. She paused on the stretcher, turning to look back at him, with an expression holding gratitude and grief, and the beginning of something that might eventually become redemption. Their eyes met across 50 feet of chaos. Victoria lifted one hand, not quite a wave more acknowledgement. Then the ambulance doors closed. Zara pulled back, small hands framing his face. Did you save people? I tried. Did it work? Elijah thought about Bethany's fractured leg, about Owen and Shelby, who'd make it home, about Victoria, who might actually tell the truth. For some of them, Zara's expression grew serious beyond her years. That's good, Daddy. Because even saving some people is better than saving no people. The wisdom hit like revelation. Elijah pulled her close, kissing the top of her head, breathing in normalcy of her shampoo and playground dust. The watch pressed against his chest where Zara's weight pinned his arm. He felt it ticking through shattered crystal. Naomi's gift still measuring time like it mattered. Around them, Harbor Heights burned and bled and tried to put itself together, but for this moment holding his daughter while she held him back. Elijah let himself believe that brave might actually be enough. The arrests came within 48 hours. Marcus Cole, first federal agents appearing at 6 a.m. with warrants charging criminal fraud conspiracy, 9 counts of negligent homicide. News footage showed him being led out in handcuffs, perfect hair, finally disheveled. Thomas Brennan followed 12 hours later. 72 years old and wealthy enough to afford any lawyer, but evidence was ironclad. Forged permits, buried complaints, emails discussing deferred maintenance, like budget optimization rather than lives. Victoria cooperated fully. No immunity, deals no lawyer-negotiated half-truths. She sat in federal interrogation rooms and detailed every decision, every signature, every moment she'd chosen money over safety. Media covered it breathlessly. Pinnacle CEO turns on board, admits decade of negligence. Elijah followed coverage from his apartment job applications scattered across the table. Garrett Blackwell called daily with updates, investigation expanding to other Pinnacle properties. Similar violations found in Chicago and Boston, federal oversight extending years. 4 days after the explosion, Garrett's tone shifted to something approaching wonder. Elijah, the Justice Department wants you as key witness for criminal trial. Will it help the case? It'll seal it. Your documentation plus Victoria's testimony creates evidentiary record that's prosecution gift wrapping. Garrett paused. But taking the stand means Marcus's lawyers come after you. Paint you as disgruntled, vindictive. Let them. I documented everything. Truth doesn't care about their narrative. 6 months after the explosion, the Justice Department announced a consent decree with Pinnacle Holdings. $15 million into Victims Fund. 7 years federal oversight. Quarterly safety audits by independent contractors. Mandatory whistleblower protection. Independent safety board with veto power over maintenance deferrals. The announcement made national news. Harbor Heights Tribune ran front-page story with photographs of 9 victims, graduation photos, wedding pictures, family portraits never to be updated. Elijah read every name, memorized every face, carried the weight of knowing his warnings had been too slow. Vera Hastings, widow of David Hastings, who died on floor 15, gave a press conference. Elijah watched from his new apartment. Better neighborhood, 3 bedrooms affordable on the $68,000 he made as safety compliance director for Harbor City Public Schools. Vera stood at a podium, voice steady despite grief. My husband died because people chose profit over safety, because they thought they could hide violations behind paperwork. She looked at the camera. Elijah Ashford tried to warn them, tried to stop this, and instead of listening, they destroyed him. If anyone in power had listened, David would still be alive. The accusation wasn't aimed at Elijah, but he felt it anyway. The guilt that came with doing everything right and it still not being enough. Zara found him on this couch that night, staring at his laptop. She climbed up beside him, Bigger tucked under her arm. The lady on TV was sad. She was? Because her husband died in the fire. Yes. Zara processed this. But you tried to stop the fire, right? I tried. And you did stop some of it. You saved people. She repeated her wisdom from the explosion day, which is better than no people. And now they're fixing buildings so it doesn't happen again. So you saved people today and people tomorrow too. The perspective shift was so pure, so uncomplicated by adult cynicism, that Elijah felt something crack open in his chest. She was right. The consent decree would prevent future violations. Federal oversight would protect workers in 8 buildings across 4 states. The scholarship fund Victoria had established, $18 million from personal wealth, would send 20 kids to college every year. He hadn't saved everyone, but he'd saved some, and maybe that had to be enough. 18 months after the explosion, Elijah received an invitation to Oakwood Elementary's annual science fair. Zara had been working on her project for weeks, refusing to show him until finished. The gymnasium smelled like poster board and pre-adolescent anxiety. Projects lined folding tables, volcanoes, solar systems. Earnest scientific inquiry. Elijah found Zara's display in the back corner. The title read, How Buildings Stay Safe. Beneath it, detailed illustrations of fire suppression systems, emergency exits, structural reinforcement. Photographs of Pinnacle Tower before and after contrast, driving home lessons most 9-year-olds never had to learn. Zara stood beside her display, explaining to a judge how sprinkler systems worked, how fire doors prevented smoke spread, how regular inspections caught problems before catastrophes. Her voice carried confidence of someone who'd lived through disaster and decided to understand it rather than fear it. The judge, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, awarded Zara first place. This is important work. How did you learn so much about building safety? Zara pointed to Elijah, her gap-toothed smile bright. My dad taught me. He keeps people safe. It's the most important job. The judge followed Zara's gesture, recognition flickering. You're Elijah Ashford, the Pinnacle Tower whistleblower. The label had followed him for 18 months. Elijah had stopped trying to control the narrative. I just documented violations and reported them. You saved lives. My sister worked on floor 37. She got out because of the maintenance stairwell you told the fire department about. The judge's voice thickened. Thank you for not staying quiet, for caring enough to risk everything. Elijah didn't know how to respond to gratitude that felt unearned. He'd lost 9 people. Zara grabbed his hand, squeezing tight. Daddy says doing the right thing is hard, but it's still right, even when it's hard. The judge smiled, tears threatening mascara. Your daughter is very wise. She takes after her mother. They left with Zara's blue ribbon and a certificate destined for the refrigerator. Outside Harbor Heights spread before them an afternoon light that turned buildings golden. Elijah's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. This is Victoria Sterling. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I attended the memorial service for the 9 victims today, spoke to their families, took responsibility without excuses. It doesn't change anything, but it felt like something I owed them. And you. He stared at the message, thumb hovering over delete. 18 months, and Victoria still surfaced uninvited, her transformation from villain to cautionary tale playing out in news coverage. But she'd also created that scholarship fund, testified truthfully despite personal cost, visited families who had every right to spit in her face. He typed, You didn't owe me anything. You owed them. I'm glad you paid that debt. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, Zara's science fair project was brilliant. She's going to change the world. Elijah's chest tightened. How did you know about that? I'm on the Harbor City School Board now. Community service requirement of my sentence. Saw her name on the winner's list. I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable. It should have felt like violation. Instead, it felt like complicated reality, where villains could choose differently and redemption was messy and forgiveness was optional but possible. He typed, Just make sure buildings stay safe. That's all that matters. Victoria's response came immediately. That's all I think about now. Elijah pocketed his phone. Zara tugged his sleeve, pointing toward an ice cream shop across the street. Can we celebrate? Absolutely. They crossed at the light, Zara chattering about her project about next year, studying earthquake-proof architecture. Elijah listened, cataloging the ways his life had reformed around new normal, better job, better apartment, daughter, thriving. The watch pressed against his wrist, crystal still cracked but mechanism functioning. He'd never replaced it, never gotten glass repaired. The flaw felt honest, like carrying proof that broken things could still work. Inside the ice cream shop, Zara ordered mint chocolate chip. Elijah got vanilla because some days simple was enough. They sat at a corner booth, Zara's legs swinging her blue ribbon propped against the napkin dispenser. She ate methodically, then looked up with serious eyes. Daddy, are you happy? The question landed harder than it should. Elijah considered lying. But Zara deserved better. I'm getting there, baby girl. Because you did the right thing. Because I tried, and because I have you. Zara grinned, gap-toothed and radiant. I think Mommy would be proud. That you saved people. That you didn't let bad people win. Elijah's throat tightened. He thought about Naomi's voice in spaces between heartbeats, about the watch that stopped and started like punctuation, about how the dead stayed with you. Not as ghosts, but as internal compass, pointing toward who you were supposed to become. I think she would be too. They finished their ice cream as sun dropped toward harbor, painting everything gold that would fade but return tomorrow, because that's what light did. The watch ticked steady against his wrist, broken but functioning, flawed but faithful, exactly like the man who wore it. Zara grabbed his hand as they walked to the car. Daddy, what's bigger than the sky? The question caught him off guard, callback to the phrase explaining Naomi's absence. He looked down at his daughter, at trust and wisdom beyond her years. You are baby girl. You and everyone who chooses to do right even when it's hard. That's what's bigger than the sky. Zara considered this with gravity. Then she squeezed his hand and smiled. Good. Because I want to be big. Big enough to help people like you do. They drove home through streets that looked different than 18 months ago. Same buildings, same grid. But Elijah saw them differently now, not just structures, but systems, not just concrete, but responsibility, not just architecture, but promise that every person who walked inside deserved to walk back out. At home, Zara hung her blue ribbon on the refrigerator next to spelling tests. She brushed teeth, put on pajamas, climbed into bed with Bigger. Elijah kissed her forehead. Love you, baby. Love you more. Impossible. She giggled bright enough to push back darkness. Elijah turned off her light, leaving the door cracked, then walked to the living room. But tonight he closed the laptop without opening it. Instead, he sat on the couch, the watch resting against his palm. Through cracked crystal, he could see every gear and spring, the mechanism Naomi had chosen because she believed in him, the mechanism that had stopped and started like punctuation marking moments that mattered. It kept running. Not because it was perfect or unbroken, but because some things refused to quit. Elijah strapped it back on. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at Harbor Heights spread beneath him. Somewhere in that city, families were healing from losses that couldn't be measured. Somewhere Victoria Sterling was trying to become someone her dead husband might not be ashamed of. Somewhere, the system was creaking forward too slowly to prevent every tragedy, but perhaps fast enough to prevent some. The watch kept ticking, time kept moving, and tomorrow Elijah would wake up and make pancakes and take Zara to school and go to work, keeping buildings safe, because that was what you did when you decided that brave mattered more than easy. He checked the time. 10:47. The second hand swept past the 12, relentless and certain. Bigger than the sky.